Nathaniel Glover was born in 1943 in segregated Jacksonville, Florida. At 17, he unknowingly headed into an angry white mob and the Ku Klux Klan, attacking young Black protesters staging a sit-in at a downtown whites-only lunch counter. Known as Axe Handle Saturday, this harrowing encounter with racism would commit him to a lifetime of fighting for justice. He joined the Jacksonville Police Department in 1966, and he was named Police Officer of the Year for 4 years, and he was appointed the city's first hostage negotiator and was elected the first Black sheriff in Florida since the Reconstruction era. Glover's memoir, Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff, was released in 2023 in conjunction with Florida State College at Jacksonville's Foundation. Book proceeds will help fund scholarships for need-based students through the Where They Will Shine Scholarship Fund. Nat will be joined in conversation with local reporter Keitha Nelson. Keitha is an award-winning journalist with 19 years of experience in the field of broadcasting. She currently serves as the co-anchor for Good Morning Jacksonville, First Coast News, NBC 12, and ABC 25. And throughout her career, Keitha has covered several major stories, including Hurricane Katrina, the Kamaya Mobley story, and the Ahmaud Arbery shooting trial. She serves on the board of Jacksonville nonprofit Hope at Hand, which provides art and poetry therapy to at-risk populations. But most recently, she's been honored with a Ken Knight Award for her coverage and positive impact within the community. And notably, she has won an Award of Excellence in Broadcast Journalism from Women in Media. Keitha has contributed to team awards, including an Edward R. Murrow Award, a Peabody, and an Emmy. So Keitha, I'll leave the rest to you.
All right. How's everybody feeling? Yes. We're gonna give a more rousing round of applause. Look who we have here, the Jacksonville legend, Nat Glover. Hello. This is gonna be a fun time. So we have about an hour. We're going to make the most of it. Clearly, we're going to get very deep in this discussion because we just heard Gabrielle put all his business out there, born in 1943.
Yeah. I tried to get that to cut out, but
they keep on putting it out there. Yeah. This is really going to be a fun time. I've sat down with the Nat Glover several times before for conversations, and he's an open book. So the good thing is, at the end of this, you guys will be able to ask him questions as well. So I have a few set of questions that I do want to delve into. We're going to start with the title alone because that had me kind of like, whoa. This is it. This is going to be a good one. So Nat, if you can, explain for us, Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. Where did that name come about? How did you come up with that one?
Well, actually, when I became a police officer, I had this, I'm going to say, this sense that I really wanted to get in a position to make a difference. When you heard in the introduction that when I was a young man in 1960, when I got caught downtown with on Axe Handle Saturday, and of course that was a part of my life that I think one could characterize as one of the worst times in my life. But as I would have it, the Lord kind of turned it around. And actually, I think it had more to do with shaping my life than the fact that I was able to survive. And I say that because I was not downtown, actually being one of the demonstrators who were conducting sit-in demonstrations at the lunch counter. I was working at Morrison Cafeteria. Some of you might remember Morrison. And in the dish room, washing dishes, which was a big thing because I was in high school and I had a weekend job working at Morrison Cafeteria. And that was huge in my neighborhood. But on that Saturday, some white supremacists and Ku Klux Klanmen came to downtown Jacksonville to put a stop to the demonstrations. And just to make sure they had the appropriate weapons and things that would be convincing, they issued all of those individuals axe handles, brand new axe handles. So when the demonstrators came in to sit down to conduct the demonstrations, and some of you may not know what a sit-in demonstration was, but African Americans were prevented, not allowed, prohibited from sitting at certain venues like public lunch counters and that kind of thing. They were just restricted. You couldn't sit there. Now you can go to the end of the counter and stand up and ask for an order, and in some instances they will serve you, but you couldn't sit on one of those stools. Well, the youth from the NAACP actually would go and sit at one of the stools. Now that would virtually shut the lunch counter down because no other white people will sit there, and they refuse to move when the people tell them they're not allowed to sit there. So that's what a sit-in demonstration was. And of course, this time they didn't have to tell them they didn't need to sit there, because those axe handle wielding individuals came in and started hitting them with those axe handles, and they just ran them out of town. I didn't even know all that was going on. I'm in Morrison. So our boss came down and told us, every Black person that was working in Morrison, told us to leave, get out of town, because he knew what was going on outside. And he told us to leave like right now. But my job was to mop the floor after everybody leaves. And I just couldn't leave until I mopped that floor. I guess I was afraid Mama was gonna find out if I didn't. But I stayed later than all the rest. And when I came out, they surrounded me. And they surrounded me. I was the only Black person in downtown Jacksonville, and they started to hit me with those axe handles. And I couldn't get away because I was in kind of a circle. And there was a police officer standing outside of the circle, taking a spectator's role. And I ran over to the police officer and I said, "Officer, please help me." And he said, "You better get out of here before they kill you." And I ran. And Keisha, I'm gonna tell you, I ran home. I was so afraid that I didn't even look back to know exactly when they stopped chasing me. And when I got home, I cried the rest of that day. And I wasn't crying because I was hurt. I was crying because I ran. You see, in my neighborhood, you didn't run away from a fight. If you ran away from a fight, you were considered a coward. And you have to live with that designation the rest of your life. And so I was embarrassed, ashamed, and I cried. But when the crying was over, I promised myself that I will never run away from another fight. I will never do something I shouldn't have done because of fear, or do something or not do something I should do because of fear. And it shaped my life.
Clearly it did.
It shaped my life. I think that was one way the Lord took that and turned it around and made me fearless. And to this day, I'm one of those individuals who, when people run from the fire, I run to the fire. And literally had a few instances, well, at least one instance where that actually happened. and it kind of shaped my life. But we're talking about striving for justice.
Right.
And the striving for justice piece is another episode that happened when I was at Martian Cafeteria. One night I got off work and police stopped me and was asking me some question about some people stealing things, and I didn't know the answer. But he searched me and he found 2 napkins in my back pocket. The napkins that you wrap the silver up with, that we use in the dish room when it get hot for handkerchief. And he said, if you don't tell me who's stealing those steaks, the only steaks I saw was the one that was half eaten. But someone was stealing steaks, and I actually didn't know who was stealing steaks. But he said, I'm gonna put you in jail for these 2 napkins. And he arrested me for 2 napkins.
Now, that was one of the many defining moments in your life, because that actually led to what could have ended your run for sheriff. It could have changed the trajectory of things, possibly making it so that you couldn't run for sheriff. But then you met a man, Mayor Ritter. Do you remember that?
Right.
You want to share that with everyone?
Right. Yeah. What Keitha is talking about was I actually had a record. After you get arrested, you have what we call a criminal record. Even though the judge discharged the case, I still had a record. So my wanting to become a police officer, everybody thought that was the end of that. But because, number one, being Black, which they did not want to hire Blacks anyway, and having a criminal record, those 2 strikes wasn't going to happen. But I had a friend who I told him the story about why I had applied to become a police officer. And he said, you sure there's nothing else to that? I said, no, there's nothing else to it. Now, he was a police officer himself. And he said, well, after hearing that story, we're going to see the mayor. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, okay, tell me when. I was going to go put my best suit on and make the best impression. He said, we're going to see him right now. Right now? Keisha, to this day, I thought he knew the mayor. Mm. The mayor walked by and waved at you. People say, I know him. So he actually said, no, I know the mayor, and we're going to see him right now. We left then and went to the mayor's office. And I'm really thinking, he really don't know the mayor. Let me just go ahead and get this over. So I'm just kind of following him. When he walked in that mayor's office, the secretary jumped up and said, hey, Marvin, how you doing? And started calling off his children's names and his neighbors' names. I said, oh, my God, we own something here. He took me in to see the mayor of Lou Ritter. He talked to me a few minutes, and Marvin Young, person that brought me up there, was saying, yeah, he finished college and he's trying to become a police officer. After we left the mayor's office, the mayor went down to the Civil Service Board administration office and told the administrators in there, I want Nathaniel Glover to take the test to become a police officer. And the administrator said, yeah, we saw his application and we know he finished college and all of that, but he been in jail and we don't hire people who've been in jail. And by the way, Mr. Mayor, we don't work for you. We work for that 5-person civil service commission board over there. Implying, of course, we don't have to do what you say do. He said, okay, you don't work for me, but I will be reappointing some of those members on the board. Now this, I mean, you can't make this up. I mean, we have to say that was divine intervention. And the next thing I knew, I got notified at my home that I can come and take the test. And here ended up being the sheriff of this county in a historical fashion. That is another divine achievement. And it had to be because of God. And I don't hesitate to say that. Each time he took two of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life and turned them into positive things. I'm convinced to this day, if I had not got arrested, I would never have become a police officer. Because they did not want to hire blacks at that time anyway. So the worst times turned out to be the best time. Now, you talked about striving for justice. I wanted to get in a position where I could give people breaks based on my position. And, you know, police officers can stop you for speeding and he could issue you a ticket and cost you some money. Or he could say, slow down and not issue you a ticket. And both of those are appropriate within his ability and discretion. But you can get a break on one, and of course you can get censured on the other. So I wanted to be in a position to give people breaks. And I got in that position as a detective. And so I was trying to say, I want to be there to do that. And I did that in a lot of instances. And when you read the story, you find where Nathaniel Glover gave a lot of people breaks within the framework of my job now. And I'm not talking about we took bank robbers and then put them in jail. But I am saying, if I thought a person didn't need to go to jail, I didn't put them in jail. But if I thought a person was dangerous and needed to go to jail,
you put them where they need to be.
You put them where they need to be.
Now, you have a lot of just great stories in this book, by the way. So we're going to have a book signing at the end of this, right? You're going to be signing books and people can get this. But I do want to say there's a lot of stories in here, but I want to get to the heart of this because the big question is, why now, Nat? I mean, a memoir at this point in your life, because this is something you could have done a long time ago. Why did you decide to finally share these stories?
Well, because people have been encouraging me to do this for years. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think what I had achieved was that big a deal, to be honest with you. So I didn't think I needed to be writing books because I know, like a lot of you all, I've read some books and I wondered after I read it, my goodness, wonder who sat down to write this. So I didn't think I had enough to put in a memoir. And some people convinced me, said, your story, where you came from, mm-hmm. a shotgun house on Main Street, a jail cell, and a life-threatening lynching in downtown Jacksonville, you need to tell somebody about that. Somebody need to hear about it. And when they talked about young people need to hear where you came, where you ended up, you need to do that. And I'm glad I did do that. And oh, by the way, Keith, the Duval County school system has adopted Nat Glover's Striving for Justice, a Black sheriff in the Deep South. And it's in the Duval County School System Library.
That alone deserves a round of applause. That is awesome. You know, your story is inspiring on so many different levels, but you mentioned it now there briefly, your humble beginnings. I've seen pictures of that shotgun house. I know your story very well, but share with everyone where you came from. When you say humble beginnings, you mean it. You were dirt poor. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to come from that to where you are today.
Yeah, and you say dirt poor. There's a difference between poor and dirt poor. Y'all do know that, right? So yeah, I was dirt poor, but I was fortunate enough to have two parents who really kept things straight, and also I had a mother who wouldn't allow me to quit school, which I wanted to do. And the reason I wanted to do it, because, hey, the people in my neighborhood who were not going to school seemed to have been doing pretty well. And the guys that I was hanging out with, one had a car, the other always had a pocket full of money, and the other had a girlfriend. I ain't have none of that, and I was going to school every morning. So I went to my mother and I said, Mom, look here. See, Marvin, Barbie, and Charles, they're not going to school, and I'm going to tell you what and she said, hold it right down. Let me help you with that. She finished the statement. She said, if you're going to stay in this house, you're going to school. Now, that's right. No, it's something. And let me say this. I think, parents sometimes will try to do what the kids want them to do. And I don't know if they're trying to be buddies or whatever, but my mother was a dictator. And it was no uncertainty. Kids used to tell me, look, I'm going to ask my mama this, so and so and so. What about you, Nathaniel? You go ask your mama that? I said, I ain't going to ask mama that. Because I know what the answer was going to be. And to this day, I think I sit here alive because of her. So I got a break there. I was poor, 734 Minute Street, all the way to Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as a historic sheriff in this county.
Okay, I hear you.
Yes.
Give him a round of applause. Go ahead.
Yes.
Let's talk about how Edward Waters played a huge role in your success. You actually going to school. You went on a football scholarship. Let's talk about that, because if it wasn't for football, you wouldn't have made it there.
And let me just say, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Keith, because my brother was a football player. As a matter of fact, my brother was a star here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I wanted to hang out with the boys. And Mama already said, you going to school. So I was pretty much getting there 5 minutes before school started. And about 2 minutes after, I was on my way home. And I was trying to meet the requirement of going to school. So, and I was living off of the legend of my brother's prowess. They would say, oh, that's Nathaniel Glover there. That's Eugene Glover, brother. I stick my chest out, and I was getting some love, getting a whole bunch of love on that. Until, and I call this another intervention by God, until I got to the 11th grade. Halfway through the 11th grade in high school, the tone of my being able to stick my chest out changed. They still said, that's Nathaniel Glover, that's Eugene Glover's brother. But they also added, but he's sorry. Mm-hmm. And see, you can't be called sorry in your neighborhood either. So the only way that I knew to get them to stop calling me sorry, I had to go ask the coach. To let me go out for football so I can play and they can stop calling me sorry. And he said, son, you don't have but one more year here. It's after the season, and you 12th grade is just 1 year. These kids have been out here 3 years. Please, please, coach, let me play. I'm a Eugene Glover brother. I played that card. And he said, okay, go on in there and see if they got in, because they were in spring training for the next year. And I went in there, and everybody had their uniforms, and I was the last one to go in there and tell the guy who was giving out uniforms, coach said, give me a uniform. And he said, ain't nothing else in here but that bunch of junk over there. So I put on what was over there in that junk pile. I had a pair of shoes about that big, but I went out and I played football 1 year. 1 year. Offensive player of the year.
And not so sorry anymore.
No, not so sorry. And not only that, the coach from Edward Waters College came to the campus and said, we want to give you a full scholarship to go to college. That's God intervention. Somebody said it. I mean, how could something like that happen? And I was able to do that and finish college and being able to do the things. And see, I have to give appropriate credit to God on that, because those were all miracles.
It gets deeper though. So while at Edwards Waters, a part of your scholarship required you to do what within the president's office? What did you have to do? What did you have to clean?
Well, when I got my scholarship, it was a work study scholarship. Had to do two things. I had to play well enough to stay on the team, and I did all conference. I just didn't want to throw that in. But anyway, and the other was I had a bathroom, a restroom that I had to clean, a male restroom. You know where it was? Right across the hall from the president's office.
And fast forward, who would become the president of Edward Waters?
I tell people it was a long way from the restroom across the hall to the president's office, but I made the trip. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
You have to. You were talking about divine intervention. I want to fast forward to your run for sheriff, because obviously you made history, becoming the first in the state of Florida since Reconstruction, first Black sheriff, the first in the city of Jacksonville. But to be a Black person to fit that role at that time was pretty much, it was unheard of. I want to talk about striving for that role, what it was like, some of the hardships you faced. We do need to delve into that.
It was difficult. When I left the sheriff's office, well, actually, if some of you remember, former sheriff Jim McMillan was about to retire, and he was not running for re-election. And one of the ministers here in Jacksonville, some of you may know his name, John Newman, who had Reverend John Newman, who had just came from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And he had just come to Jacksonville. And if you all remember, Philadelphia was one of the first major cities in this country to elect a Black mayor. And when he came to Jacksonville, and Sheriff McMillan was retiring, he said that my career dictated that I was qualified to run for sheriff. And that was unheard of in Florida. He come in with that mentality that probably no one else in Jacksonville had. And he said, you need to run for sheriff. And I said, not in Florida. Really, in Georgia had elected a few black sheriffs. And I said, but I don't think so. In Florida, well, Georgia had a few counties that had more black folks than white folk, and they were able to elect black sheriffs. And I said, no, I don't think that's going to happen. And everybody, I mean, all of my other friends said no too. Said, you're not going to do anything but embarrass yourself. And I have to tell you what they said. Them white folks are not going to turn all the guns in this city over to you. And I said, that sounded about right to me. And see, in my heart, I was trying to look for a palatable way out. Remember what I told you? I couldn't say it was I was afraid, because remember, I'll never be afraid. So I was looking for some help that I could use that would make sense to me. I went to talk to my wife, who, man, she's so easy. I thought that I explained to her, they want me to run for sheriff, and you know, if we get into politics, they're gonna be all in our business, and they're gonna be following all of our kids around and all of that. And I said, it's gonna be awful being in politics. You know how politics are. She told me, yeah. And right at the end, she said, but I think you still should run. I said, oh my goodness. And that took away any excuse that I had. And I ran. And if you all remember, I was elected in the first primary. 55% of the vote. And once I was elected, I said this. I said, I will never let the people of Jacksonville down, no matter what. And as a result of that, my 8 years in office, we were able to actually reduce crime in Jacksonville 17.1%.
That is awesome.
And incidentally, the person who's talking to you was also inducted into the Florida Law Enforcement Hall of Fame.
Toot your own horn. You deserve it. Your book also highlights some reforms. We can get into that briefly. You guys don't mind, right? Because there are a lot of issues, some would say, with policing now, and some reforms that you feel needs to be made. Let's delve into that just a little bit, if you can.
Well, one of the things that I've always done, and this would be interesting for some people, whatever job I do, I try to find a way to be the star. I'm really thinking about being the star. So if I am a sheriff in Jacksonville, Florida, then I'm competing with all the other 65 sheriffs in the state. And I'm trying to figure a way to raise my head above the rest of them. But being the first Black sheriff, I was getting a whole lot of pushback because I wasn't very much accepted by most of the other sheriffs. So I had to figure out a way for them to say, he's pretty good. And I do remember going to my first Sheriff's Association meeting. And of course, I had just got elected, and I was taking a phone call from Jacksonville. We were in Orlando, and I was talking on the phone, and becoming time to go to meeting with all the other sheriffs. And I was telling the people in Jacksonville, call me back, because I got to get in here and I can't be late. So when you get that information, call me back. I hung the phone up. And I told the bellboy, I said, look, when they call back, I'll be down in that meeting down the hall in that room. You come and get me out. And I answered the phone. He said, okay, sir, okay. So I went running down the hall, and I look around, he's running behind me. So I stopped. I said, what's the problem? Did you hear what I said? He said, yes, sir. I just want to know, where will you be sitting so when I come in there, I can find you? I said, son, You come in that room, you won't have a problem finding me. I'm telling you, that is a true story. That is a true story. And I got a lot of pushback from the sheriffs, and they were getting used to me too, and that was history, and I understood that. And I was trying to think of a way that I can do something where they will say, how did you do that? And I was able to do that. Some of you may remember this. I had the President of the United States call one morning and tell me, I want to come to Jacksonville, bring the Attorney General, and we want to walk through your city in one of the neighborhoods with you. And Bill Clinton came to Jacksonville, and we walked through a neighborhood. Can you imagine walking up to the door, somebody knocking on the door, you come to the door, I say, I'm Sheriff Glover, and oh, by the way, this is the President of the United States and the Attorney General. And guess who else was with us? The governor. And this is the governor of Florida. That happened right here in Jacksonville. And that was because I had made a commitment that I was going to walk every beat in this city every year I was president. I also put police officers' names on their cars. I also got citizens involved in us protecting them. We had to meet with them on a monthly basis. I also went in the neighborhoods that were littered with trash and overgrown fields and all of that, got some of the inmates out of the jail, and we went in those neighborhoods and cleaned them up. I'm working right alongside of inmates. And when we did that, those same people in that neighborhood gained more pride. And when things happen in the neighborhood, they would call the police and many times step up and say, it's those boys down there on the corner that broke in those houses. So those were the kind of things that I was able to do to make a difference. And one of the things I did also raise the requirement for police officers. You had to have a college degree to become a police officer, because I always felt like people who were better educated, they treated minorities better, they treated seniors better, their human relation skills were better. So we did a number of things. So those are the initiatives that Keitha asked about.
But before we get to the Q&A section, I do want to mention this briefly because you're a huge proponent of education. You always have been. I don't know if you guys are aware that he donated a large portion, I think it was the majority of your pension, $240,000 went towards scholarships. All of his money went towards scholarships for kids in our community. And the proceeds, by the way, from this book, in case you guys don't know, Striving for Justice, are going towards, again, scholarships for kids in needs in our community. So give him a round of applause for that.
Yes. Thank you.
And you briefly touched on why you feel this is so important, education is.
Because that was the way I got out of my neighborhood. It was clearly education. And I can tell you this, you have so many young people in your neighborhood who could be gifted scholars, who could be real contributors to our this country as a whole, really, just not neighborhoods. If they had the opportunity to have a little bit of hope that if they finish high school, they can get access to higher education. But the cost of education, I was able to play sports, and if you can't play sports and you got to pay to go to college, they were dead on arrival. They wouldn't even stay in school, and they end up in the criminal justice system. And when they go to the criminal justice system and end up in prison, it costs us almost $60 a day to keep them locked up. Now, if we had invested in their education, they will not only be revenue producing, but they'll be tax paying and contributing to our community. So, to me, that makes sense. A little bit of investment have that great return. So we are better off investing in them early so we won't have to pay that $60 a day. I often say we can put them in a Days Inn on a daily basis and instead of locking them up for $60 a day. So I say everything I've been able to do, it was worth it. I was able to send 30 kids to college and pay for their whole education. And I appreciate that.
Thank you to Nat and Keitha for such a wonderful conversation thus far. We are going to open it up for audience questions now. So if you do have a question, please write it down on the note cards, and we have volunteers on either side to collect them. For our Zoom audience, if you'd like to send in a question, please do so through the Q&A chat. But we'll go ahead and collect questions, and I'll hand them off to Keitha, and we'll continue this wonderful interview.
Please be on your best behavior with your handwriting. Don't write like me. Don't do chicken scratch so I can at least try to read.
Chicken scratch. And there do it.
And then, yeah, we can. Yeah. Ooh, this is a good one. There are no names on these. We're just going to go for them. But this is a good one, Nat. As a community, how can we strive for justice?
Well, first thing, I think it's a good idea to see the criminal justice system comprised of police officers, the state attorney's office, and the judges. Okay, and it also corrections, but not so much correction because you don't have much to do with that. But I would say get involved somehow and be able to monitor those agencies. You want to make sure that you're working with the police to an extent that you can reduce crime in the neighborhood. And I say, and I wanted this to happen when I was sheriff, I say you not only work with the police, but you also want to make sure it's certain that you hold police officers accountable. In other words, if you got something going on in your neighborhood, call the police. And if you don't get the response that you want, talk to the zone commander in that area and tell them you haven't gotten a response. And if you don't get the response for that, tell them you're going to talk to the sheriff about it. You see, we all got bosses, and you want to talk with your state attorney and make certain that they're treating everybody equal. And if you think the judges are sentencing some people to longer sentences than others, a class of people, then call them out. You know, judges have to be elected. You do know that, don't you? Fact of the matter is you very seldom see a campaign because no one runs against them. But if you start to hold them accountable and start to identify judges that you're not satisfied with being fair, then you can believe me, there will be enough interest where you'll have some other people come up and want to run against them. So what I'm saying, get involved. Find out some way for you to get involved.
Are there any cases that you worked on as a sheriff that had a big impact on you?
Yes.
Example, please.
I bet you most of you know it. Which one was it? Mattie Clifton. It was Mattie Clifton. I actually had two, Mattie Clifton, and then after that I had another one, and it was two boys that were shot with automatic weapons in a car, and they were shot up so bad they had just came from Pop Warner football practice and Kirkland Kirkland kids. And actually, the reason they got shot up was because they were picked up from practice by their aunt, who was driving her son's car, who was a drug dealer. And a rival drug gang was looking for him. And they jumped out of the car and shot the car up. And I looked in that car and I could see where the bullets had broke those young men's arms. And you all know about Maddie Clifton. She was killed by some kid by the name of Josh something. But anyway, he was only about 15 or 16 years old, and he put her under his bed. And when we found her, and the only reason we found her was because Josh's mother saw the body fluid started to, decompose and come out from under the bed, and she called the police. Well, the reason those two hit me so hard was because here I am getting all of these accolades for being the sheriff, and I felt like I failed those two young people. I just asked myself, if there had been another sheriff, would these young people have died? And for whatever reason, I carried that weight on my shoulder for a long, long time. And I still think about it.
Many things you did as sheriff in the community. Do you plan to meet with our current sheriff as a mentor?
Oh yeah, I'm available. I think the sheriff and I've already met since he's been elected, and I've shared some thoughts with him, and he's very, very receptive. And I want to continue those meetings. And this question actually encouraged me. We need to have another meeting. And so I promise to you that we will have.
This is a really formative question. I don't know what you will be able to take from this, but isn't racism the foundation of the United States and the example that Hitler used, the Jim Crow laws, to establish the Nazi Party in Germany?
Well, let me just say this. Racism in this country is not something new. Now, to be honest with you, African Americans have come a long way. We've had slavery started in this country, was it 1419? Somewhere along the 1619, yeah. Thank you for that. 1619. And slavery ended in this country in 1865. So, you add that up, that's a long time, over 200 years, maybe 50 years, yeah. And so now, as you take 1865 into 1900, you had what we call the Reconstruction era, because Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan, they were quite prevalent to about 1900. So we've been working on racism and trying to correct that from 1900 to where we are now. And we've come a long way, but we still have some challenges, and we still see signs where, as we make advances, we have to take some steps back, because we have people that come along and say, oh, we're doing too much here. We saw that in the rollback of affirmative action. We saw that. And we see that with legislation passed in certain states to, I'm going to say, suppress minorities voting ability. So we are having those challenges, but I would like to think that we've come from being slaves to historic sheriffs and president of the United States of America. So we're headed in the right direction. And I'm convinced that we will continue that progress, and we will all be here in this country together, being productive. And again, one day we will be the envy of the world. When we had the Capitol storm in January 6th, I looked at that on television, and I can tell you, my eyes got watered. And I can tell you this, we will be the country that we once were. And I'm optimistic about that.
We all are, right? This is a...
Thank you.
Now, a lot of questions, when people ask questions, I can answer them myself because I know the story very well, but this one I don't know. Who inspired you in your life and career?
Well, first, I'm gonna have to start off with my mother. She was the beginning, and she poured in me this whole notion: find a way to do it better than it's been done. And she didn't say it as articulately as that, but that's what she said when she said, do that over again. And it wasn't like, no, Mama, can't nothing pass. No, that's not gonna pass. You didn't say nothing, you went and did it again. So I'm gonna say her, but then all along my path, every time I got to a point in my history along my journey, and I needed the answer to some question or some help in order to get to the next juncture, for some reason, somebody was there. Somebody was there. When I started to run for sheriff, there were two other candidates who had been running for a long time and had a bunch of money, and I didn't have any money. As a matter of fact, I often talk, I could have had my first political meeting in a telephone booth because I was starting off, no money, no support, no organization. And I had two brothers, Steve Patrick and Gary Patrick, came up and said, don't worry about that. We'll do all of that and run your campaign free.
I actually recently interviewed Steve Patrick. He said that was one of the biggest accomplishments in his life, is helping you become sheriff.
And they came from nowhere. So I'm a firm believer in this. If you have the courage and the faith to step out, you will be sent all the resources that you need to make it happen. And I'm telling you, it will come from directions that you didn't even know existed. I believe that core of my heart. I ran for mayor, of course, y'all remember that, right? And when she read my biography, she did say I was the former mayor. So you do know what happened on that. But to this day, I believe I lost the mayor's race because I needed to go to Edward Waters College. I didn't say wanted to go because I didn't want to go. I needed to go. And to this day, it's Edward Waters University, and it's grown, and I feel proud of that.
You mentioned the mayor. Someone wants to know what is it that you're currently doing to support our current mayor?
Well, I want to make sure that we give her an opportunity to create a legacy that will be inspiring for others to follow. She's the first female mayor in the history of Jacksonville, Florida. And if she can do a job that would encourage other people to say, we don't have any hesitation or reservation about having another female mayor, then I can tell you she would have achieved that. And I want to do everything she asked me to do. And she did ask me about being on the advisory committee when she took office and all of that. And I was right there to do that. But I also want to give her the room to do what she needs to do.
This might help quite a few people who are even watching as well. How does a person needing help reach out to someone who will listen when told an officer's report is incorrect to get it corrected? So it's worded a little weird, but they want to know if you keep on hearing from an officer or officials that you can't get information you need. What do you do? How do you finally get through?
Well,
to get the
one of the things that I worked on when I was sheriff was that you live in an area in the city, and you have what we call a zone commander who's over law enforcement in your area. I tell you, find out who that zone commander is. And that can be the person that you can go to for almost anything in this city as it relates to law enforcement, and they will usher you through the process. See, we often think we got to know somebody downtown. Somebody in this city is responsible for keeping things safe and orderly in the area that you live with. The 6 zone commanders. They are assistant chiefs. Find out who yours would be and make certain that you have access to them. And you can start with the police officer that rides your beat. You can just ask them, who's the zone commander in this area? Get the number and make a direct call. Here's the problem I'm having, and you can get results from that.